is the Glass Cannon Network. Welcome to Cannon Fodder, a behind-the-scenes look at the Glass Cannon Network.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Cannon Fodder. It is Wednesday, October 11th, 2023, and I'm your old pal, Joe O'Brien.
And I'm Troy, the King in John Lavallee.
The King in John.
I always forget that I have this statue on my desk of Hastur.
This something to terrify your children with?
Yeah, no, it was gifted to me. I think I talked about this on some show. The statue itself wasn't gifted to me. My mother-in-law got me this gift from it's called the Mysterious Package Company, and they send you just like shit that you're supposed to figure out.
I do remember this now.
And she didn't know I was into Lovecraft or anything. So honestly, this was way before Time for Chaos or anything like that. Way before I probably even did the new game Who Dis Cthulhu. And I was like, what the fuck? And I open it up. It's got a copy of The King in Yellow, and it's got a statue of Hastur. And now I leave it on my desk, and I never really realized that I've got The King in Yellow just chilling here with me.
Just chilling. Just hanging out.
There he is.
That's fantastic. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the FOD. We got a fun one for you today. It's so funny. Both of us have a lot going on today, and we're like, let's try to keep this tight. But this is going to be a tight yet chunky FOD.
Tight and chunk?
Super chunk, dude.
Well, first combat, man. There's lots to talk about.
First combat. So what we're going to do here today is get that network news out of the way immediately and keep that really short. And the bulk of this week is going to be We Are Stupid. So get excited, folks, because we are very, very dumb. And it's going to be fun to dig into some PF2 rule conversations for you rules freaks out there. And then, of course, we'll do a little listener mail. So kicking it right off at the top, dude, big news this week. I don't know if you realize this because of the way the schedule is working out, and it's going to be so close to our next FOD, but it's not, but it's coming before our next FOD.
I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Do you realize this is the last FOD before Voyagers of the Jump returns?
I did not know that.
Exactly. I knew it would surprise you. It's kind of a tricky timing because it's not till next week.
It's Monday.
It's Monday, but so it'll be out before the next FOD. So
Holy
Monday,
shit.
October 16th, those of you that have been waiting for Voyagers of the Jump to return, Season 2 comes out on Monday. So,
wow. That's exciting. Yeah, we were originally aiming for September, and as we started to look at the schedule, we're like, no, let's do October. I think we can push it till then and then have it go straight through the holidays. This first episode, spoiler alert, you're going to want to listen.
I know. I can't wait for people to watch it, hear it, whatever it is. So very excited. That's on Twitch, right? That's going to be live stream on Twitch, 8 o'clock Eastern on Monday night, twitch.tv/The Glass Cannon. In true fodder fashion, I just want to give you a little tidbit that I love about the way that we've been working really hard behind the scenes to make production better and more efficient and a little bit more professional, to be honest, in the sense of getting ahead and being able to consistently put out content when we say we're going to. And Voyagers, yeah, it got pushed a little bit from our initial plan, but this is one of the first shows ever that is basically done. Like the whole season has been shot before it premieres, like an actual TV show.
Oh, that's been a dream of mine for years.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. It happened.
So it's just so cool. So yeah, you're going to get that every week from now till Christmas time. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that'll be great. 10 episodes is the plan. And Mongoose is on board. It's one of the
sponsored
official
by
sponsors.
Mongoose. Yeah.
Matthew's been really excited about it. I mean, he was talking about it all summer before they started
recording. All summer he was talking about it.
It's like, all right, put down the gin and tonic. I've heard enough.
Yeah, he really keeps telling other people that don't play in the game the story.
The whole story.
Because he's so excited for the second season story. So I don't want to say any more. I definitely got to check out the first episode, though. It is not what you're expecting, so it's gonna be great.
Jump!
Also, New York Comic Con is this week.
Oh,
so
man.
in 2 days, dude, our show at New York
Holy
Comic Con, playing the Marvel Multiverse RPG, a whole slate of classic Marvel heroes coming to the table.
I know who the heroes are. I've got the adventure. It's going to be a spooky Halloween-themed adventure, and it's exciting. As usual, though, my concern is how do I get these 6 random fucking Marvel characters together on a mission? It was hard enough at Gen Con. Now I'm like, why would this person work with this person? So that's really what I'll be struggling with between now and Friday.
Yeah. Well, I do wonder if you owe anyone an explanation.
No, I don't think I do. And also, like, sometimes I'm like thinking about it myself. I'm like, you know what? Let me just put it on the players. Let them do it instead of me writing this big
exactly.
Glorious
what do you have to do
intro.
all that work for?
Yeah. Why are you in New York right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Where are you in New York?
So it's in New York?
Oh, yeah,
Spoiler?
it's in New York, yeah.
Nice!
They're all set in New York.
I know my way around New York. All right, well, that's fantastic. And then last piece of news that I have, I mean, this is probably the biggest news of all. I have returned to streaming video games in the GCN Employee Lounge.
I've retired.
I am retiring. Like, I know you guys love the sports references, but I'll be the, what's his name? Andrew Luck. It'll be the Andrew Luck of the Glass Cannon podcast. It's like completely out of nowhere in my prime. Just be like, I quit.
I'm done.
I retire. Yeah, I'm streaming Lies of P, and I just want to mention it real quick because it's awesome. And I didn't know about it. It's a Korean, I believe, developer made a game that is very much an homage to Bloodborne and Soulsborne games in general. And it's completely consuming me. I'm so into it. And so I've streamed it 3 times last week, and I'm going to continue this week. So keep an eye on the Employee Lounge if you want to check out this game. It's freaking awesome. And I highly recommend you stop by and hang with us. I had a bunch of people on Friday hanging out. Like, it was really, really fun. And
Dude, that's
big
fun.
bad boss fights that are really, really brutal and just kind of fun to watch tactically. So
I'm shocked that you're able to play that with both Starfield and Baldur's Gate 3 out. Kudos to you. But you were telling me about it, and we were shooting in the office this week, and I was like, holy shit, this looks great. I don't know when I can possibly play it.
Well, this is the one thing I know for certain. You are going to play it, beginning to end. You are gonna play this game.
Platinum that, John?
I don't know when it'll be. Definitely 2024. But I've given up Starfield to play this. I haven't played 1 minute of Starfield since I fired it up last week.
That's all I'm playing.
I'll get back to Starfield at some point. But this is just, I really wanted to stream something and hang with everybody. And this one is really fitting. I was saying before, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out how to stream Starfield.
Well, we said I was like, it's a personal game. It's like it's a sim, it's a life sim in space. And like, I just want to enjoy that on my own.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just walk around and like get a room in a hotel and go to sleep.
Exactly. So like if I had a hook, if I had an idea for like a short arc story I wanted to tell, or like, I want to play Dax, like, role play Dax.
Yeah, you like doing
something.
That.
Like, I could see doing that down the line, but as I'm exploring the game right now, I just want to, it's a more personal experience, and I don't find it very entertaining to watch. So, but Lies of P, very entertaining to watch me smash my controller live on air. So don't miss that.
It looks incredible. So yeah, I'm excited.
All right. Let's move on to We Are Stupid, dude. This is going to be the bulk of our episode today, as we're going to delve into a lot of mechanics, and I'm excited to talk not only about things we got wrong, but things that are, general discussion starters, as Professor Eric is so gracious to bring to the table. We're going to do 2 full episodes of 2 different shows right now. We're going to do episode 4 of the Glass Cannon podcast. First and foremost, we're going to delve into that. But then for those who want to stick around for the rest of We Are Stupid and listener mail, we're also going to do the Boston show, which was a bear.
Which was riddled with errors.
Mistakes, allegedly. And Professor Eric went through it with a fine-tooth pen.
God bless him.
A classic tooth pen.
Yeah, the old fine-tooth pen.
The old fine-tooth pen. And really laid out some issues that Matthew is going to have to deal with.
Seems like it's going to be a very heavy Matthew made mistakes episode.
There's going to be a lot of that on the back end. Actually, let's start out with Matthew as we talk about Devise a Stratagem, which is the new ability that he has brought to the table with his Investigator. Look at this, Troy. Boom! Already prepped and ready to go.
Demi-plane action.
Little demi-plane action. Using the Pathfinder Nexus here. Devise a Stratagem is... the wording is very, very important on this ability because it says that you choose a creature you can see and you roll a d20. That's the action. You just roll a d20.
Right.
If you strike the chosen creature later this round, you must use the result of Devise a Stratagem for your strikes attack roll instead of rolling.
Take that back. That seems weird. How would you know if you struck them if you didn't use the roll?
That is what Matthew did. He did it in his own head. It's not lowercase s strike. It's capital S strike.
Right.
So striking is the action of attempting to hit.
Right.
So, but it's just a natural human thing. If you strike the creature, like, oh, so if I hit it. So in the episode, he seems to be implying like, so did I hit it? You know what I mean? And you're like,
right. And
wait, what are you asking me?
And I think I told him in the first round, I was like, yeah, that would be a hit, and you're not supposed to do that.
So Professor Eric lays out very clearly, Matthew rolls the die and does not add modifiers at this time. Troy should not tell him if it's a success or not until Matthew spends the action to strike. You still don't have perfect knowledge, but you have very good knowledge. You know exactly what you rolled. You know what the number is going to be, and you have to kind of guess at the AC, right? Early in a combat. So, and then when you strike, you're adding your intelligence. If you use the devise a stratagem, you're adding your intelligence modifier instead of your strength or dex and another damage die on top.
Yeah, that's insane.
And so this is something I'll let everybody know we have cleared up with Matthew, but we had already recorded some episodes. So you may see that mistake again, but it is fixed in future episodes, and we do know about it. So devise a stratagem, I think, is going to come up from time to time, but you know, it is what it is. Next on the list, I mean, absolutely had to bring it up. Troy, just in case you didn't know, a Wakizashi has the deadly property.
Oh, wait, look at that.
Look at that. Right there.
We should email Sydney.
Deadly. Yeah, we thought that the Wakizashi is something that you would have to, like, get critical specialization in order to unlock the deadly property. I truly wonder sometimes how my stupid brain works. Like, I just don't understand it at times. Like, I've known from the beginning that deadly is just a trait that some weapons have. Like, why would I think you had to be a higher level to unlock the deadly property?
Did you say that? I mean,
I did. I mean, in so many words. I wasn't
listening as you got, Matthew was like, you lied to her face. And I was like, I literally wasn't listening to you guys' argument.
Yeah, I didn't really like drive the force behind that. Sydney sort of said that she needed it, and I was like, oh yeah, okay. And at least that's my memory of it anyway. But I was just, when you do a show, your brain just doesn't work the same way.
So much going on, yeah.
Yeah, and you're just you just get a little dumb. So I was stupid there. Of course, deadly, just, you know, when you crit, you get that extra D8. And we did get that called out after the fact and got it fixed. But you just made fun of Sydney many times, which was really funny.
Well, I didn't give her the extra D8. That was the
You didn't give her the extra D8. And part. Matthew rolled a recall knowledge of some kind later, which we'll talk about in a second, on the Gorga, the Gorgo or whatever.
Yeah.
And you were like, you know what you do know? Because you rolled like a 13. You're like, you know what you do know? That a Wakizashi has the deadly property. I mean, it was awesome.
And I think Sydney flipped me off.
I believe. Oh, you know what? I believe she did. I didn't see the video.
Dude, there's nothing I get a kick out of more. It's like when a player realizes something later that would have done more damage, and I don't give them the damage as a punishment. Yeah. I mean, I've been doing that for years.
It's just fantastic.
I find it really funny. But I mean, it would just like start fist fights in home games.
Also, always want to point out when Professor Eric gives us a good grade and a compliment. He says, however, it is in the same situation with the Wakizashi. It's great to see an effective use of debuffs to help generate a crit. Demoralizing as a first action to set up rather than as a third action is great to see. That's what he said. So we're learning little by little. Okay.
Oh boy.
I hesitate to get into this. I really don't think that we should, but the fact is, it was brought up in this episode. It's in this episode. People might be out there talking about it, so we're going to have to talk about it.
Should I open the AP up?
No, you don't need to open the AP up, and you'll see why immediately when I throw this up on screen. It's the monastic archer. Oh, that's the wrong one.
That's not it.
That's not it. Here it is. The monastic archer stance.
Ah, yes.
So this causes issues again later that we have addressed. So forgive us if it comes up again, but I do want to address it now because Professor Eric, makes it clear that when she is in this stance, she can still use, not when she's in this stance. When she's holding a bow, she can still do unarmed attacks. The problem is the wording of monastic archer stance basically says you cannot attack without a bow or, the required weaponry to do it. And so what Eric is saying here is most of the time GMs, because there's no rule on how you get out of a stance. And we talked about this behind the scenes later down the line in recordings. Yeah. There's no real written rule for it. So most GMs do a one action, drop the stance action. If you want to then change the kind of way that you're fighting. However, you could just drop the bow. So dropping the bow is a free action that would immediately break the stance. But what GMs are sort of ruling out there is if you want to keep holding the bow and then you want to start kicking in melee with flurry of blows or something like that, you need to spend an action to drop the stance, almost like spending an action to sheathe the bow kind of thing. But if you just drop it, then it automatically breaks the stance. It's kind of a tricky
so the bow is what's causing the confusion.
Yeah, it says, well, no, here's what's causing the confusion. I believe that it's on here. Let's look at it. It says, while in this stance, here it is. While in this stance, the only strikes you can make are those with long bows, short bows, or bows with the monk trait. So that is the key line here that Professor Eric focuses in on. He also then admits there's no rule for turning off a stance, quote unquote. There's no rule for turning off a stance.
Right.
It simply says, and I believe I have it here. Let's see.
Well, why don't you click on the stance trait for a second?
I am. So I'll go to the monk, and they have in Demiplane, they have a summary thing. Here it is. Key terms of your class.
Yeah.
Stance. A stance is a general combat strategy that you enter by using an action with the stance trait and that you remain in for some time. Okay? A stance lasts until you get knocked out, until its requirements, if any, are violated, until the encounter ends or until a new stance, whichever comes first. After you take an action that has the stance trait, you can't take another one for one round. You can enter or be in a stance only in encounter mode, which makes sense. Oh, by the way, that's an interesting thing to keep in mind is like, you can't just be like, I enter a monastic archer stance before the door is opened, right? Like, very tricky. You have to be in encounter mode. So reading that, to me, I'm going to go back to it again. To me, this says here, until its requirements are violated. So why couldn't you just attack without using a bow, thus violating the stance and thus breaking it?
Because in monastic archer stance, while in the stance, the only strikes you can make are those using long bows, short bows, or bows with the monk trait. So once you're in that stance, you cannot kick. However, would that be considered if you started kicking that you violated the stance and therefore you're now out of the stance?
That's what I'm thinking.
I think that's the roundabout way of doing it. You just have to remember that if you're going to do that, you're no longer in the stance and you cannot enter back into it in this encounter. Right?
I don't think that's the case.
If you use,
you can't enter a new stance, I believe.
Oh no, you can only be in an encounter
in one
mode.
Round.
In one round, you can't use another action with the stance trait. Yeah, so if that is considered violating the stance,
after you take an action that has the stance trait, you can't take another one for one round. So
yeah, that's the way I read it, because they've specifically said until its requirements, if any, are violated. And the requirements of monastic archer stance is that you can only use longbows, short bows. So yeah, the way I'm reading that is that's the way you get out of it. You violate it by kicking and punching. And then next round, you've got to burn another action to get back in the stance if you want to do a flurry with the bow. I'm going to email Kate. And then around episode 13, 14, 15, this will come into play.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God, so funny. But thank you, Eric, for delving into that, because it is tricky. I like that the first two things that we're doing here in We Are Stupid are really deep dives into new classes we haven't played before. That's really what this is. It's a monk specific thing and an investigator specific thing, as opposed to general combat rules.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something I don't spend a lot of time on. Like, I don't dig into your individual classes. When I look at like the breadth of my prep and the time that I have to prep, part of my prep isn't like, let me learn the blah, blah, blah class. I learn through play. That to me is more interesting, because my goal isn't perfection. My goal is like creating something that is a learning experience for the players and the viewers. You know, I think that's way more interesting than already knowing everything out the gate. Although I do expect you guys to know it. Know your classes. That's where I get a little antsy. It's like, come on, you have one thing you got to learn.
Yeah, but what we're dealing with here is, and I'm not going to give Matthew an excuse, because to me, devise a stratagem is pretty clear. We just screwed up on our understanding of it, but like it's pretty clear.
And that extra damage wasn't on. When we recorded, we were still using the beta of Demiplane, and the little extra damage die wasn't on there.
Right. So he just forgot because it wasn't on his sheet.
Right. Yeah. And that's the problem with living by digital sheets. Is like you still got to know how the class actually works. You can't just go by the digital because the digital could be wrong or not updated.
Right. The digital is in beta. Right. It's being worked on, and it's fixed now, and so now he remembers it. But what's the other thing I wanted to mention real quick? Oh, just that like the monastic archer stance, though, like it has nothing to do with knowing your class. This is an unclear rule where debate is possible in raw versus RAI, and a GM needs to make a call for this game. Like, do you have to spend an action every time to get out of a stance or not? That's a GM call because it's not written in the rules.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good to know.
I wouldn't offer that house rule of like just use an action to drop the stance. I would say violate it. That's how you drop it.
You got to violate
That's
it.
the action you got to use, and if you know, that's how I read it. Interesting. Yeah, and you always read the traits, and that's something I even forget, especially with spellcasters. Like, got to read those traits. So usually, there's just so much happening, especially when we're live for Strange Aeons. It's like I do the prep, and then we're in it, and it's like we do our best.
Yep.
That's the game. That's how people play.
100%. Let's look real quick at treating wounds. So I treated.
I think it's
wounds.
trot is the past.
Past tense of treat is trot.
You trot wounds.
I trot wounds in this episode, and I did not treat disease, but under the medicine trained actions, there's treat wounds. Treat wounds. So I got a nat 20 zoni. I critted on the treat wounds, and you'll see that a critical success, the target gains 4d8 hit points, and its wounded condition is removed. So I was able to roll 4d8, heal myself a whole ton. The reason that I bring this up is because Professor Eric said, make sure you realize that criticals on treating wounds are roll 4d8, not roll 2d8 and double it. And the reason that is a very clear distinction, whereas like most other crits that we do are, roll the damage and double it. Like that's how we're doubling damage when we hit on crits and stuff like that. Uh-huh. The reason you don't do that on treat disease is because of this section here. You can increase the DC of the check to increase the hit points regained by a flat number. In this case, it's 10 if you do DC 20. If you're a master, it's DC 30. Let's say it's a DC 30 check and you're going to increase the hit points gained by 30. This is what Suki is doing now, by the way, in Strange Aeons. Like she's now increasing the DC because we're higher level.
Yeah. So if you crit, it would be 48 plus 30?
Exactly. Yeah. Not 2d8 plus 30 times 2.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why it's important to make that distinction between the two in treat disease, because the higher versions have a flat bonus that never gets doubled.
I would never think to double it because I would just read it and it says 4d8, but I also never heal.
Totally. Yeah. It's just a note. This is more like he wanted to make sure we didn't do something wrong here because I did roll 48, but he's just like, make sure. But I know somebody else did. I don't know if it's in GCP or if it was in another game, but somebody rolled 2d8 and just doubled it when they crit on their treat wounds. And I just wanted to show and explain why not, because at later levels, you will get flat bonuses that don't double. So don't get in the habit of rolling 2d8 and doubling it. All right, one more topic here on episode 4 before we move over. This is a general topic that came up because of Matthew's investigative ability to, I can't remember the name of it right now, but where he gets like a free knowledge check when he is using devise a stratagem. Yeah. He can add a knowledge check onto it. And this kind of opened a can of worms in Professor Eric's opinion, which is a comically that's ironic, a frequently debated issue in the community right now, which is retrying recall knowledge checks. By the book, there is a rule for it. I'll actually show it to you right here. And this is actually in the GM guide. You have to go to the GM guide for this, but it lays out for you additional knowledge. Sometimes a character might want to follow up on a recall knowledge check, rolling another check to discover more information. After success, further uses of recall knowledge can yield more information, but you should adjust the difficulty to be higher for each attempt. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Once a character has attempted an incredibly hard check or failed a check, further attempts are fruitless. The character has already recalled everything they know about the subject.
That's the key there. You can't retry after a fail.
Right. But here's what the community brings up. It's a philosophical question. Is a recall knowledge check always and exclusively based on group knowledge or individual knowledge? As in, is it just knowledge on Gorgas, or is it knowledge about this Gorga in this combat, in this round? Is that different than group knowledge? So if I'm like reading a book about Gorgas, right, and I roll my check 2 days before we encounter one because we've heard they're out there, and I get a piece of success, or I fail and I don't really get anything. Let's say Matthew's character does the same thing. When he then fights a Gorga, can he not know anymore that while he's in a fight with it?
But you rolled the check.
Not say he rolled the check.
Say he rolled
in our game, I rolled the check, but let's say he rolled the check and let's just say he failed.
My gut is no, unless there's something about this Gorga that is unique and different from your basic Gorga. Then that's where it gets into a gray area.
So the way that Eric laid it out is basically the complication comes with a few classes: investigators, mastermind rogues, and outwit rangers. These are builds of these classes that specifically have abilities that give you retries, essentially, on, not retries as much as like give you knowledge checks on someone you're currently fighting, right? And what he says is the general recall knowledge rules of failure means you can't try again is nerfing these classes' abilities, because it should be you can't try again on this Gorga. But if you turn to this Gorga, maybe you could learn something, about it. And there's 3 interpretations. One is it's all group. If you don't know it, you'll never know it. The other interpretation is it's all group for everyone else except people that have these specific abilities. And then there's the third interpretation, which is all knowledges are individual based. You're always just doing this monster, this creature, not all of this type of creature or whatever.
Well, I would see a fourth one is the one I like. Is like it only matters if they're different. Like you're fighting 2 Gorgas. They have identical skills. If you fail on one, you're not going to learn anything from the other one because they have the same exact skill set. However, if there was like a daddy Gorga and a baby Gorga, then I would allow it. So I think it's kind of like this is your GM call. That's how I would call it. Mm-hmm. Like if you're fighting 3 identical creatures, if you fail on one, you fail on all. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't even let you burn the action. If you go to recall knowledge, I would be like, they all look the same to you.
And then you're not going to get anything.
You're not going to get anything more. Save your action. That's my compromise. But oftentimes you'll have like, you fight a group of kobolds and there's the kobold leader and then there's the kobold warriors, and like the kobold leader has maybe a little bit extra. Then you could use it. That to me seems fair, because then you're not nerfing, but you're not like letting them.
You don't just let them keep trying until they get the knowledge about the creatures. Yeah.
Yeah. What's nice about using Foundry, because I'm using Foundry for my monsters, is like all the checks are right there with the DCs and the applicable skills. And so I've got the DC set, and this came up recently in a show that is going to come out later this year, where it said like something was incredibly hard, because you guys were like, what? How come we didn't get that? It was a very high roll. And I'm like, well, it says incredibly hard. And then we started to work out on air as to why. And that was interesting.
That was cool. Did you know about this? I'm assuming you did not. This additional knowledge thing. I mean, I think that's awesome. I never knew that.
So probably read it once and never.
Even after succeeding, you can attempt another check to get more information. But it's recommended here that the GM adjusts the difficulty to be higher for each attempt. That's cool. I like that. Something to keep in mind. If you rolled, a 24, and you're like, and that, and for you, whatever, that was like a natty 12. And you're just like, you got some information. You're like, I know there's more. There's something Troy's holding back. Like, I want to do it again. You're like, all right, but now it's going to be DC 26.
Or have somebody else roll it.
True.
Somebody else spread an action. There's so many times still, people don't know what to do that third action. If you haven't rolled that recall knowledge, even if you don't have a great roll, try it. If you know there's more to learn and the other person can't re-roll because they've failed, use it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it for episode 4 of the Glass Cannon podcast. Let's look at the Boston show. This is going to be a lot of highlighting, as we said, Ethel, of course. However, let's kick it off with our good buddy Skid and what Professor Eric predicts will cause an issue, and that's the thrower's bandolier. So this was the new item that Skid got. Did you see anything about this? Did people say stuff about this on the boards?
No, I haven't really been reading.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody said anything about it, but he said, Professor Eric said he believes this would be a controversial topic because there's a lot of pros and cons.
Controversial, like it's going to make Skid mad.
Well, no, controversial like in the community, like does it work for bombs or not? Because it never says bombs in the text. It's kind of for thrown weapons, but people say, you know, like Alchemist should be able to use it for bombs, even though a bomb's not really like a dagger.
It's a thrown weapon.
Right, exactly.
Do bombs have the weapon trait?
I think I actually have this up somewhere. Let's see. I do. I don't know. Is there a weapon trait?
I'm looking at like acid flask.
Alchemist Fire does not have a weapon trait. It has a bomb trait.
The bomb trait. Yeah. Is there a weapon trait?
I don't even know if there is.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is
it's a fucking weapon. It's not meant like, here, this is a kiss on the cheek.
Right. I agree. And so does Professor Eric. He thinks that this should definitely be allowed and that Skid, that this would make it work a little bit more like the 1E Alchemist that Skid sort of started with, and that this feels like a right fit. He did highlight one thing, though. Just remember, this has a +1 weapon potency rune. Oh, it's cut out of my screen because of the zoom in factor, but it has a +1 weapon potency rune, which is going to give a +1 to any weapon that you throw out of it. So it gives a +1 potency to the bomb. But then it's important to keep in mind that these bombs level up. So at level 1, at level 3, it gains a +1 item bonus to attack rolls. And what Eric points out is these do not stack. So if Skid is using higher level bombs, those bonuses don't stack with the bonus from the bandolier.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So the +1 weapon potency is an item bonus, and it would not stack with the item bonus of higher level bombs. So just something to keep in mind.
And just so everybody knows, we email all of Professor Eric's notes to the cat. Joe emails them. So even they're not listening to Fodder, I doubt. So they know they're given this information. So hopefully it'll make it into the show.
Yeah, hopefully it makes it into the show. All right, let's keep moving on, and we'll get into Ethel. This is an interesting one. Ethel needs a free hand or a weapon with the grapple trait in order to grapple. Ethel is a two-weapon fighter build. I don't know if one of his weapons has the grapple trait. I don't think that it does. And I think he's grappling people, assuming he's just like putting his arms around them while he's got these two weapons. But that is against the rules. You can't do it. You have to have a free hand or a weapon with the grapple trait. So something we'll share with Matthew.
There it is.
Bravery. Again, this comes up. I mean, this comes up over and over with, I say with Matthew as if like he's such an idiot, but like we all forget during the show that like he always should be reducing his frightened condition by 1 automatically whenever he gets it. So if he's ever frightened 1, he's just immediately frightened 0. If he's frightened 2, he's immediately frightened 1. So that's an important thing. Important thing to remember. Ethel crit with the hammer, and we forgot to knock the enemy prone. We did it again. That's his critical bonus, is knocking the enemy prone. He did it on an AOO, I believe, and it would have stopped him and knocked him prone. Stupid. We are stupid. We are stupid.
We're being nice by saying we.
We're being nice by saying we. Minor issue with Ethel's class DC. He's only trained in his class DC, so Professor Eric thinks 25 was correct on the AOO. However, Frightened 2 would also apply to your class DC, so that would lower it to 23, thus a success in that case. So, important to remember that Frightened also carries over to your class DC whenever anything comes up for that. Okay, so here's a big one that I'm really glad that he brought up. You know that Eris, I believe, and Ethel are now both rocking this bad boy, Battle Cry.
Okay.
When you roll initiative, you can yell a mighty battle cry and demoralize an observed foe as a free action. If you are legendary in intimidation, you can use a reaction to demoralize your foe when you critically succeed on an attack roll.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nobody's legendary yet, though, I don't believe.
No. Legendary would be very, very end of the line. I think that's
after
like
10th level,
17. Right? No, I think it's like 17th level.
Wow,
yeah, it's like the very end game. Okay. So yeah, not going to be for a while, if at all. The important thing to remember here is that they both utilized this battle cry ability, at the start of the combat, and it's important to remember that creatures are immune to further attempts against it after. So if you go to Demoralize here on the Nexus, reminder, the last line, regardless of the result, the target is temporarily immune to your attempts to demoralize it for 10 minutes.
Right.
So basically, you can't intimidate a creature again in an encounter, whether you succeeded or failed. And since Eris and Ethel both did it as battle cry, right at the start, it would have made the enemy immune to both of them for the remainder of the combat, to trying again.
Yeah, so that's important. Yeah, I'll forget that. So
yeah,
I need you to come in.
I think that I'll be able to remember that one, because I just did not know that rule. I never read to the last line of Demoralize. I have never had a character in 2E that demoralizes. It's just not something I've used yet. And so, reading to that last line is important. The immunity for 10 minutes is going to allow, some creatures, on a successful save early on to get away with a lot of stuff. So
that's cool.
Cool and good to know. Let's see. How about we go to, let's go to the Alchemist Fire again. So the reason I had this up, and I thought that this was kind of fun, was because Alchemist Fire, look at those traits, Troy. We always talk about how important traits are.
Consumable fire splash.
Alchemical and bomb. You know what's not in this list?
What?
Magic.
Ooh, yeah.
It is not magical. And so as a result, Professor Eric points out, Aldo was in a unique position to be one of the most effective characters against the golem, because it bypasses its physical resistances and is not magic. So it bypasses its magic immunity. Alchemist Fire, fire bombs are an incredible tool to use against a golem, and I believe, or at least he believes, that we were treating them as if they were magic, and so they would not affect the golem in the same way.
I'd have to go back and listen. I can't remember if I was.
Yeah,
he's specifically saying like, he's immune to that, or
it was a while ago, so I don't remember exactly what we said. But in Professor Eric's notes, he says bombs are not magic, so bombs do not affect the golem normally, or they should affect the golem normally. They won't trigger any of the 3 branches of the golem anti-magic. The property rune, however, is magic, so the sonic damage that Skid is now getting in addition would fall under the golem anti-magic, which would cause higher than expected damage. Golem
anti-magic is tricky because they're all different. There's like some magic that not only hurts the golem, because they're immune to most magic except for X, but the X does even more damage to them. So you have to figure that out and then do it. And you guys got some of that, but some of it didn't. That's just a good thing to remember. I can't remember how it actually played out because I don't always tell you guys like, that looked like it affected him. That looked like it didn't.
Yeah, it is interesting, and then he just rounds it out with alchemists often end up being rather effective against golems, not affected by their high physical resistances, nor blocked by their magical immunity.
That's cool.
So it's an interesting fine line Skid found there to get it in. And then the last thing that we have, and this is it, then we're done with We Are Stupid, is the slowed wouldn't usually stack. But as a cinematic ending / segue to phase 2 of the combat, I have no complaints. Professor Eric is fine with the stacking slow, but it is good to just keep in mind in general, that generally speaking, slowed is not going to stack. So if you're slowed 1 and then another effect would make you slowed 1, you're not slowed 2.
Is that true of all conditions or no?
Different conditions operate slightly differently. Frightened stacks, for example. Yeah. So I know that. If you're frightened 1, something else goes frightened 1. I believe you're frightened 2.
To know what stacks and what doesn't. I don't know if there is a list.
I wonder if there's a cheat sheet out there.
Yeah, I need that cheat sheet. Call in and give us the cheat sheet.
Thanks to Demiplane for the Pathfinder Nexus there to look up all that stuff.
That's
much appreciate. And let's move on here to a little listener mail before we get out of here. Let's hear from the Naish.
Let's do it.
It's time to listen to mail. You gotta get your brain up on it. Listen to mail. You gotta cue that fucking A.
All right. Thank you so much to Michael in Missoula, Montana.
Old Missoula.
That's a lot of M's. Michael in Missoula, Montana writes in with a question for Troy.
Oh, I already hate it.
And Troy alone.
Troy
I'll see myself out.
Oh, I used to have a website called troyalone.com.
Really?
Did I ever tell you that? Yeah. It's like my first website. I didn't want to use my name, and so it was just troyalone.com. And then a publicist that I became friends with when I was working at Caroline's was like, dude, that's your brand. Your brand is Troy Lavallee. Change that shit. And I did.
Nice.
I don't know why it was Troy Alone. I just was like, I was a lone wolf, Joe.
You still are.
I still nothing changes.
A question for Troy. I'm a relatively new GM running my first 2E adventure path for some family and friends. One of the things that I and many groups, I would guess, struggle with is fluctuating party size. I'm already having to rebalance every encounter because we have a party of 7 in an AP written for 4 players, and I've gotten fairly proficient at it. The problem arises when one or more of my players cancels at the last minute. I know you've had to deal with similar situations with the live shows. Do you have any advice or tricks for tweaking encounter difficulty on the fly? I just want to provide my players with a continually challenging experience, but would feel terrible if we have one or more PC deaths due to bad balance. It's a great question I think a lot of players or GMs deal with.
He's playing 2E?
2E, yeah.
Yeah. A home game is going to be different than a streamed game, right? Like for a streamed game or a live show, what I don't want to do is add more enemies because that just drags out combats. But I also have learned you can't just throw an extra 1 or 2 points to an AC or 1 or 2 points to an attack because it wouldn't make a difference in 1E. It sways so wild in 2E. So I've learned not to do that. The way I've been approaching it in Gatewalkers thus far, with 5 PCs is really just playing with hit points. And I haven't even been too much of that because, you guys are still learning your tactics. You're still learning this. The hammer's going to fall eventually. I'm just kind of leaving it as it lies. Now, if you're dealing with 7 PCs, 6 PCs, you're going to have to make some other changes. I would lean in favor of adding combatants as opposed to tweaking stat blocks. Because unless you know this game inside and out, you can really fuck up encounters by tweaking stat blocks. Add another guy in there. And then you can always call things on the fly. Like if you add another combatant in and you're like, holy shit, I'm going to TPK this party. Like all of a sudden that guy, one of these guys, when he gets hit for 15 damage and he still has 5 hit points left, just take him out of the combat. You know what I mean?
Runs. Yeah, please, in terror.
Moving hit points isn't always like giving guys extra hit points. Sometimes it's like you really gotta be able to call this on the fly and see like what is this? Was that such a brutal hit that leaving that guy with 1 hit point is going to add to the dramatic tension when you could just like remove that 1 or 2 hit points, and be like, and you kill him.
And that's just a moment the party needs, right? That's a win they need. They're on the ropes. Yeah, give them that extra hit point or 2, just like put the enemy down.
I do that shit on Strange Aeons all the time, just because it's specifically meant for drama. I'm doing it more for the audience than for the players. But I really haven't had to tweak too much. I think 2E as a system is unforgiving enough, especially with what I'm doing with bottle caps over hero points. Like I don't really need to tweak too much. It's hard enough, but I would say lean towards adding more combatants than messing around with stat blocks.
Cool. I was playing in the Order of the Amber Die game with, I think, 7 PCs. And Adam from Order of the Amber Die is a terrific GM. Obviously, he wasn't doing this on the fly. He was prepared. He knew exactly how many players he was going to have. But he buffed ACs and 2-hit numbers. I want to say by 2, something like that. And for 7 players, it's absolutely vicious for every individual player. Yeah. So that +2 to AC and +2 to hit effectively means that you need to combine all of the strikes from all 7 people to maybe get 2 hits on the creature, because its AC is so high that you never crit it without a natural 20, and you have to like roll a natural 15 or higher to even hit it. And so it feels impossible in a way, and characters go down all the time. Like they go to dying all the time. But in the encounters that I did run with them, everybody survived, and we won every fight after but they were all harrowing, So I think it was pretty well balanced to add 2 to AC, but it does make it like you're lucky if you get 1 hit or 2 hits, your personal character, on that boss or that creature during the combat. It makes it like It's just really hard to hit, and they hit you really hard. And so, yeah, I don't know. Combining all 7 people's abilities, it seemed to balance the fights pretty well.
You got to know your group, and you got to know your game. Like that, Order of Abadai is a seasoned group. They know the game really well. They're going to play super tactically.
So when somebody goes down, other people are like, they're using their actions very efficiently to like stabilize people. They know to leave somebody unstable for a round because they don't need to do it that round. They can do something else for that round. And like, so they're very savvy like that. And so he's able to put them in those positions. But I'm disagreeing with you that adding 8 to AC and adding to hit is deadly.
Yeah. And we're not that type of game, you know what I mean? Like we're not savvy in that way. We're savvy in the entertaining way. And so if I started adding 1 or 2 to AC, especially these Strange Aeons encounters, which is a converted adventure path, you guys would be miserable. You'd never hit anything. Another thing you can do is like fudge your dice if you want. It's not something I do, but like if you're a new GM and you're just trying to create an experience for your players, fudge your dice. So like if you added a guy to the combat and they're still mopping, all of a sudden your fucking natural 3 is an 18. Get a couple more hits in so that you make them feel like they're on the ropes. And then later on, maybe when you roll an 18, have it be a miss so you kind of even out for the cheat, the fudge earlier. You can even out later if that, like, you never want to fudge on a killing blow. But I'm just trying to think of like things you could do behind the screen just to, that's the whole point of that screen.
And I think fudging is an interesting idea when you've already added a combatant and you're doing that combatant's rolls, right? It's like that combatant shouldn't even be there in the first place.
Right. You can do a wild card.
And so if you want to fudge a little bit, fine. And then, because if you really don't like fudging, then like, you could be like, well, I mean, the main combatant there, I'm not fudging. Like, there's nothing fudging about that. I might fudge a little bit on this added threat because it's already doing damage that's not in the book. You know what I mean? I'm going to add, a little bit of a fudge here or there to make sure that it feels balanced to the players. I
never advocate for fudging, but I think for new GMs, you're trying to create an experience. Like, you do what you got to do, and then as you get better at the game, you can leave that out.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
It's very important as a new GM to read the room. You got to just read the room. If everybody's down,
get through the session.
If everybody's down, like, just don't keep leaning on them, but there are going to be times when like they need to know that you can kill somebody. They won't respect you until they know that you'll kill somebody. If they feel like they get out of every scrape without a scratch, eventually they're going to not have any fun. So you gotta
kill someone just to keep them in line. Sometimes right in the first session, just so they know you mean business. Deus Ex Machina kill too.
Set the tone. It's like going to a poker tournament. Very early on, you want to make a strong move early. Set a tone.
Go all in on the first flop. First pre-flop. Who brought this dick?
Who brought this dummy? All right, well, that's going to do it. That's going to do it for us this week on the old FOD. Thanks to everybody for hanging out. And hey, we got it. We got an encounter in the books, good buddy. We got one on the books.
Oh man, next week I've already edited next week and the week after. These are some good apps coming up. We recorded some more last week. It's going to be hot.
Oh, by the way, anybody surprised at my first heal as a character for treat wound or for my first match? Minimum healing. All right, we're out of here. Take it easy, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye. Voyager Season 2 on Monday.
St. Louis, 4 tickets left.